All right, listen to me. You bruised masterpiece. Yeah, you. The one sitting there feeling like your entire life just got thrown in the trash by people who weren't even playing fair in the first place. You feel sick, don't you? Physically, mentally, spiritually sick. Because what they did to you isn't just mean or unfair. It's disgusting on every level. They targeted you, picked you out, locked on like a missile, an innocent person, and they pulled the trigger anyway. Let's call it what it is. They hunted you, not because you were bad, not because you did something unforgivable, but because you were easy to blame, easy to twist, easy to throw under the bus while they kept their own hands looking clean. And you're sitting there asking yourself, why me? What did I do? What is wrong with me? Here's the punchline. You did nothing that justifies this level of cruelty. You existed. You trusted. You showed your real self. You walked in thinking this world still had some rules, some baseline decency. They saw that softness, that honesty, that innocence, and decided, perfect, that one. That's the one we can break. You were targeted because you're not like them. Read that again inside your head, else let it burn through the fog. You were targeted because you are not like them. They saw you as disposable, a good scapegoat, an easy story to sell. They could twist your words, exaggerate your mistakes, fabricate motives you never had, and the crowd would eat it up. Drama, chaos, outrage. You became content to them. A storyline, a villain they could point at to distract everyone from what they were doing in the dark. You know what's really sick? They knew you were innocent. On some level they knew. They felt it. They saw the confusion in your eyes. They watched you trying to explain, trying to defend yourself, stumbling over words because you couldn't even process that this was happening at all. And instead of stopping, they doubled down. They turned your confusion into guilt, your quiet into coldness, your breakdown into manipulation. They flipped the script and started directing the movie of your life without your consent. You're sitting with that weight, that shame that doesn't even belong to you. You replay every second in your head, every word you said, every expression on your face, every little detail that might have proved their twisted story wrong. And it never feels like enough. It feels like you are dropped in a courtroom where the judge, the jury, the lawyer, the audience, the cameras all belonged to the same side. And you were just thrown in without a mic. Tell me if this hits. You started apologizing for things that weren't even yours. You started rewriting your memories to make their treatment make sense. You thought, maybe I am the problem. Maybe I am too much, too sensitive, too weak, too emotional, too naive. You tried to make it your fault because your brain hates loose ends. You needed a reason. They were cruel. You must be bad. End of equation. Except that equation is garbage. They targeted an innocent person. That's the headline. That's the truth. That's the core of the entire nightmare. Here's what they'd never admit. You scared them. Not with violence, not with power. You scared them with potential. Your ability to love deeply. Your ability to care when others checked out. Your ability to stand for something in a place built on fakery and shallow performance. People like that hate mirrors. And you were a mirror. Your existence reminded them of everything they weren't. Honest, kind, real. That's why they had to twist you into a monster in their story. It was the only way they could sleep at night. They needed to believe you deserved what happened. They needed everyone else to believe it too. That way, they never had to face the truth. They destroyed someone who would never have done the same thing in return. Let that sink in, not just in your head, in your chest. Because right now you're carrying their guilt like it's your backpack. You're dragging it everywhere. You're waking up with it, going to bed with it, scrolling through life with this invisible story stamped on your forehead. I must have done something. You didn't. You got targeted. There's a difference between guilt and trauma. One belongs to the person who did the harm. The other sits with the person who survived it. You're on the wrong side of that trade, and here's where it twists. This part is ugly, but hear it. They wanted you broken. Not just hurt, broken. They wanted your name stained, your energy dimmed, your spirit cracked. They wanted you walking around half alive, second-guessing everything, so that you would never reach the version of yourself that threatened them in the first place. That version of you, the one they were terrified of, the one they thought, if this person ever finds their voice, we're finished. That version is still in there, battered, bruised, bleeding, but breathing. You keep thinking you lost yourself. Here's the truth. You didn't lose yourself. You buried yourself to stay safe. You shut parts of you away because every time you showed them, someone stabbed them. You stopped speaking because every word out of your mouth got twisted. You stopped trusting because every hand you reached for had a knife hidden in it. That doesn't mean those parts vanished. They're behind locked doors inside you, waiting for you to decide their survival wasn't a mistake. Let's talk about that disgust for a second. That sick feeling in your stomach when you remember their faces, their messages, their lies, their fake concern. That shaking in your hands when you think about the moment everything flipped. That rage that comes out of nowhere and scares even you. That isn't weakness. That isn't being dramatic. That is your nervous system screaming, "What happened to me was wrong." You have been gaslit so hard, you started gaslighting yourself. You've told yourself things like, "It wasn't that bad. I'm being over-dramatic. Other people went through worse. I should just get over it." You downplayed your own pain because the world around you treated your suffering like a spectacle or an inconvenience. Guess what? That sickness in your chest, that heaviness behind your eyes, that knot in your throat whenever you try to talk about it, that's your inner self refusing to let this be normalized. Your pain is proof you still know the difference between right and wrong. Your pain is proof you still care about justice, about fairness, about truth. You know who doesn't feel that pain? The people who did it. They feel fear of exposure, fear of consequences, fear that their mask might crack. You know what they often don't feel? Real remorse. That's why waiting for their apology is emotional self-harm. Waiting for them to get it is like waiting for a fire to apologize for burning you. They don't apologize because admitting what they did would shatter the story they told everyone, including themselves. They would rather twist the narrative, rather paint you as crazy, unstable, dangerous, bitter, obsessive, than admit, we targeted an innocent person. Here's the part that hurts, but it's the shift. You're not going to get justice from them. You're not going to get closure in the form you want. You know what you can get? Something darker, something stronger, something they never wanted you to touch. Power. Not the fake kind they have. The kind built on control, image, and manipulation. I mean the ugly, raw, unfiltered power of someone who has seen the worst in people and didn't turn into them. You could have become just like them. You had every reason. You were betrayed. You were humiliated. You were dragged. You were treated like you didn't matter. That kind of treatment pushes a lot of people into full villain mode, and not the poetic kind. The hollow kind, the hurt people pipeline. You stood at that edge. You looked into that abyss, and you didn't jump. You're still here. Still hurting, yes. Still dealing with flashbacks, with triggers, with random waves of anger that hit out of nowhere. Yet even in that chaos, there's a line inside you that you haven't crossed. That's your spine. That's your moral code. That's the part of you they couldn't contaminate. Here's the funny part, Joker-style funny. They thought they were destroying you. In reality, they were revealing you. The version of you walking around before this. Soft, hopeful, maybe a little naive, thinking you could win everyone over with kindness, thinking if you explained yourself enough times, people would understand. That version of you couldn't survive in this world. That version would get eaten again and again. What they did, as disgusting and evil and unforgivable as it was, ripped off the last illusion. You saw what people are capable of when they feel cornered, jealous, exposed, or bored. You saw how quick they are to sacrifice a real human being for attention, status, or comfort. You saw the mask drop. And even though that experience wrecked you, it also handed you something. A level of awareness that most people never reach. You see the red flags earlier now. You notice the tone behind the words. You catch the micro-manipulations. You feel the energy in a room. You're not paranoid. You're upgraded. Your innocence wasn't stupidity. Your innocence was trust. They burned that trust. Yet there's a different kind of innocence you carry now. You still want something real, even after everything. You still crave genuine connection, genuine loyalty, genuine love. That hasn't died, it's just guarded. That's not a flaw, that's sacred. Listen carefully. You are not dirty because of what was done to you. You're not tainted because they lied about you. You're not broken because they decided to use you as a target practice dummy. They threw mud at you. The mud sticks to your clothes, to your name, to the way people see you from a distance. Inside, under all that mess, your core is still untouched. You feel destroyed because everything superficial got hit. Your reputation, your confidence, your sense of safety. The core, that deep, unshakable part of you. They scratched it, but they didn't own it. That core is sitting there with a cigarette and a smirk, like that's all you've got. You know what your job is from here? Not to forgive them, not to understand them, not to make peace with monsters who used you as a shield. Your job is to walk back into yourself and reclaim every piece they tried to repaint. They called you crazy? Cool. You're intense, passionate, alive, not dull, not numb. They called you too much? Correct. You're too much for small people. That is not a crime. They called you weak. Yet here you are, breathing through a level of pain that would have turned them into rubble. You are not weak. You are carrying emotional weight every day that would fold them in half. You feel sick because your body is still processing the impact. Your mind is still trying to build a timeline that makes sense. Your heart is still mourning the person you were before they did this. Give yourself the grace they never gave you. You're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to cry over it months, years later. You're allowed to replay scenes in your head and finally respond the way you wish you had. You're allowed to still care about something everyone tells you to get over. That doesn't make you weak. That makes you real. Here's where the Joker energy comes in. You don't heal from this by going back to who you were. That person is gone. You heal by becoming someone they never prepared for. Someone who remembers every detail. Someone who never again apologizes for existing. Someone who can look straight into manipulation and laugh. Someone who cares deeply, yet refuses to be a target ever again. They wanted an innocent victim. Instead, they accidentally built an aware survivor. You're going to move different after this. You're going to talk different. You're going to choose different. You'll scare people who are used to the old version of you. Good. You don't owe anyone comfort anymore. You don't owe anyone the soft version of yourself just because it made them feel powerful. The next time someone tries to twist your words, you won't over-explain yourself into exhaustion. You'll state your truth once and watch their reaction like a scientist, not a beggar. The next time someone plays victim while harming you, you'll see the pattern instantly. You won't stand there trying to fix it. You'll walk away with your head high, even if your hands are shaking. You're not cold-hearted. You're clear-headed, and that feeling, that I'm literally sick feeling, that will shift over time. First, it's sickness, then it becomes fire, then it becomes fuel. You'll look back at this version of the one shaking, doubting, overthinking, crying alone, and you'll feel a wave of grief, then pride. Because this version right here is the one refusing to stay on the floor. This version is the one choosing not to disappear, not to become a ghost in your own life. This version is the one listening to a voice that sounds dark, harsh, maybe a little unhinged, but honest. You are not the story they told about you. You are not the villain in their cheap little performance. You're not the weak one in this situation. You are the inconvenient truth in a world addicted to comfortable lies. They targeted an innocent person. They dragged you through hell. They left you with scars that still itch, still burn, still pulse on bad days. Yet here you are, conscious, self-aware, evolving in real time. They get to live in denial. You get to live in reality. That hurts more. It also sets you free. Keep that anger, not as poison, as a boundary. Keep that memory, not as a cage, as evidence. You survived a calculated attack on your character, your sanity, your heart. You walked through a level of emotional violence most people will never understand. And you're still capable of love. You're still capable of empathy. You're still capable of sitting with another broken person and saying, I get it, and actually meaning it. That's the part they never had. That's the part they can't fake. You're dangerous in a way they will never be, because you've seen hell up close and you refuse to become another demon in it. Remember this, you were targeted, you were innocent. What they did was disgusting. You are still here, and the version of you that rises from this, they're not ready for that one. They think they know you, right? They think they've got you filed away in some cheap little folder in their heads labeled problem, crazy, overreacting, dangerous, whatever fits their narrative that week. They walk around with that fake confidence like, yeah, we handled that one. We shut them down. We exposed them. Exposed what, exactly? Your humanity? Your breaking point? Your ability to feel? They didn't expose a monster. They exposed a human being in pain and treated it like a spectacle. They turned your nervous system into entertainment. Your tears were screenshots. Your panic was gossip. Your silence was proof. You know what's wild? There were moments where you almost believed them. You sat on your bed, phone in your hand, staring at the ceiling thinking, maybe I really am everything they say. Maybe I deserve this. Maybe this is karma. You started bargaining with the universe. You dug through your past, trying to find a crime big enough to justify this sentence. And nothing matched. Nothing lined up with the level of hate they threw at you. Deep down, there's a part of you that keeps whispering, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel fair. This doesn't feel earned. That voice? That's the part of you that still knows the truth, even when your brain is fried from trying to make sense of nonsense. You're not crazy. You're traumatized. Your mind is doing backflips, trying to build a story where their behavior makes logical sense, because the alternative is worse. Accepting that some people will hurt you just because they can. You came into this life thinking there were rules. You got hit with the realization that there are people walking around with no internal laws at all. They don't care if it ruins you. They don't care if you can't sleep. They don't care if you're having panic attacks in the bathroom. They don't care if your family looks at you differently now. As long as their image is clean, your life is negotiable. That's the sickness of it. You weren't treated like a person. You were treated like a shield, like a distraction, like a trash can for their own ugliness. And here's the part that twists the knife. Some of them swear they're good people. They post quotes about healing. They share mental health awareness graphics. They talk about kindness and empathy in public. Behind the scenes, they were crafting your downfall like a group project. You saw certain faces when the storm hit. The ones who stayed quiet. The ones who didn't want to get involved. The ones who watched you burn and said, yeah, I'll just wait to see how this plays out. That silence, that neutrality, that was a choice. You remember who checked in and who disappeared. You remember who suddenly treated you like an inconvenience. You remember who believed rumors without ever giving you a chance to speak. You were innocent, not perfect, not flawless, but innocent of the story they told. They took your mistakes, your imperfections, your mess-ups, magnified them 1,000 times, and glued them to your forehead like a label. They didn't talk about context. They didn't talk about motives. They didn't talk about what led up to things. They talked about you like you were an object to be evaluated, not a human being trying to survive. That's what makes you feel sick. You weren't just hurt. You were dehumanized. And yet, even with all of that, your heart still aches for understanding instead of revenge. You still sit there thinking, if they just knew what this did to me, if they just knew how much this broke me, maybe they'd feel something. You keep hoping there's a conscience in them somewhere, a tiny voice that wakes them up at 3 a.m., whispering, you went too far. You cling to that hope because you don't want to believe people can be this cruel and sleep like babies afterward. Here's the dark truth. Some of them do sleep just fine because they've trained themselves to see you as less than real. They turned you into a character, and characters don't bleed in their world. You do. And under all of this, buried under the shock and the disgust and the rage, there's another feeling you're scared to admit. Shame. Not the shame of, I did something terrible. The shame of, they made me feel like I'm unlovable, unworthy, dirty, broken. You feel embarrassed for being the one it happened to. Embarrassed that you trusted. Embarrassed that you cared. Embarrassed that others saw you at your lowest when you were never planning to show that side to anyone. That shame doesn't belong to you either. It's second-hand. You absorbed it from them. You inhaled it from every lie they told in your name. Your body is acting like it's guilty. Your mind is acting like it's guilty. Meanwhile, the only real guilt sits in the hands of people who will never admit what they did. You're carrying a weight they dropped on you and walked away from. That heaviness in your chest, that's stolen property. There's a version of you sitting inside your own mind, hands over their head, crouched in the corner like a prisoner. That version thinks they deserve to be locked up. They think they deserve the punishment. They think if they just stay small enough, quiet enough, maybe the world will forget and stop kicking them. You locked yourself in a cell built by other people's accusations. The door was never yours. The bars were never yours. The verdict was never yours. Hello, you beautiful disasters. The misfits, the black sheep, the ones they locked away in the attic of society's mind. Welcome back to the show they never wanted you to survive. They called you insane. Not misunderstood, not unconventional. No, insane. Like your thoughts were fire and your voice was a weapon. Like your passion was a disease. They labeled you because they feared the mirror you held up to their fragile little world. You cracked the glass. And for that, they branded you dangerous. But isn't that funny? They never asked why the fire was burning. They just screamed when it got too close. They never looked beneath the scars or into the furnace of your soul. They just pointed and whispered, "That one's broken, that one's wrong, that one doesn't belong." But here's the truth they can't swallow without choking. You were never insane, you were awake, and waking up in a world that's addicted to the comfort of delusion. That's the real madness. Oh, but you taught them, didn't you? You didn't run, you didn't beg, you didn't twist yourself into their neat little boxes or cut yourself into their acceptable shapes. You embraced the chaos they tried to beat out of you. You wore it like war paint. You sharpened every insult into a blade and carved your own throne from the ruins of their judgment. They called you insane, and you became the definition of fear itself. Because there's something they never tell you about madness. It's not screaming in a padded room. It's not rocking in a corner. No. Real madness is smiling while the world burns and having the audacity to dance in the ashes. Real madness is standing in front of the people who laughed at you, spit on you, tried to erase you. And not just surviving, but thriving, flourishing, dominating. Because you don't play by their rules anymore. You burned the rule book. You didn't just survive the storm, you became the storm. And now, they're running from the monster they created, running from the truth they buried. That you were right all along. They used to mock your visions. Now they cling to your words like gospel. They used to scoff at your warnings. Now they tremble, realizing you were the only one who saw the collapse coming. And you didn't just warn them. You let it happen. You let the towers fall. You let the illusion shatter. And when the dust cleared, you stood there, laughing, bleeding, glowing. You became the architect of their reckoning. And they will never forget you. See, they called you insane, because that's all cowards know how to do. They diagnose what they don't understand. They demonize what they can't control. And when someone dares to break the chains and scream, "I will not obey," they call them a maniac. But you took the title, you took the insult, you took the venom, and you made it your crown. You became their nightmare with a heartbeat, a symphony of scars and steel. You didn't become their version of sane. You made them redefine madness on your terms. They called you insane? Good, because only the insane are free enough to imagine a world beyond the bars. Only the insane can dismantle a broken system with nothing but truth and rage. Only the insane can smile through pain, grow through hate, and love themselves in a world that tried to bury them alive. So let them talk, let them tremble, let them build walls and whisper from behind them. You already walked through fire, they're just now smelling the smoke. You didn't come to be understood, you came to be remembered. And oh, they will remember you. They'll remember you not as the outcast they discarded, but as the reckoning they never saw coming. You see, they wanted you to fold. They wanted you to kneel, apologize, smile politely while they dissected your soul with their sanitized words and plastic compassion. They expected you to break quietly. They needed you to collapse so they could feel safe in their illusion of superiority. But instead, you grinned. You sharpened your agony into poetry. You turned their rejection into your resurrection. While they slept, walked through life, numb and obedient, you turned every scream into symphony and every scar into armor. And now they don't know what to do with you. Because you didn't just survive, you ascended. They used to laugh, now they flinch. They used to gossip in shadows, now they look over their shoulders, because something about you has changed. That fire behind your eyes, it's not rage anymore, it's clarity. You've seen the truth, that the world doesn't reward sanity, it rewards conformity, compliance, slavery wrapped in smiles and scripted pleasantries. But you were born allergic to obedience. You tasted their poison and spat it out with a grin. You danced on the edge where they told you you'd fall. And when you did fall, you learned how to fly on the way down. And now, you look at them, the normal ones, the sane ones. You see it, don't you? How empty they are. Their laughter, hollow, their goals, fabricated, their lives, quietly crumbling beneath the weight of pretending. But not you. No, you burned the mask. You kissed the abyss. You stared into the black void of your own mind and made it your cathedral. You built a home in the places they fear to look, where pain whispers secrets, where silence becomes a roar, where the old you died screaming and the new you was born, laughing. You made peace with the madness. You stopped trying to fix what was never broken. You stopped apologizing for being real in a world built on filters and facades. You stopped shrinking just to make others comfortable. And now they're terrified. Not because you're insane, but because you're free. You don't need validation. You don't seek permission. You don't beg to belong. You create your own kingdom, one brick of defiance at a time. A throne built from every time they told you, you're too much. You're too loud. You're too intense. You're too angry. Good. Too much for them is just enough for the world you're building. Because here's the secret, darling. They were never scared of your madness. They were scared of your power, that untamed, explosive, unapologetic truth you carry in your bones. You don't need a crown. You don't need a title. You don't need their acceptance. You're the embodiment of everything they tried to erase. And still, you rise. You rise with the howl of the hunted turned hunter. You rise with eyes that have seen too much and a soul that refuses to die. You rise with laughter that echoes like prophecy through the ruins of their ignorance. You rise not as a symbol of healing, but as a weapon forged from every betrayal, every breakdown, every moment they tried to convince you you were wrong for simply feeling too deeply. You are not their mistake. You are their lesson. A walking, screaming, grinning reminder that some fires cannot be extinguished. Because they were never flames of destruction, but of rebirth. So yes, they called you insane. But now they kneel, now they imitate. Now they whisper your name with reverence in the same breath they once used to condemn you. Now they look to you, not because they want to understand, but because they realize they never could. You were never meant to fit. You were meant to fracture the mold, to take everything they fear and make it beautiful. So let them stare. Let them tremble. Let them pray that you never turn your full attention toward them, because they thought they knew madness. They thought it was chaos, disorder, dysfunction. But you showed them the truth. Madness is clarity in a sick world. Madness is resistance in a system built on silence. Madness is power unchained. And now, they finally understand. They didn't break you. They unleashed you. Good, not final. Because this isn't the end. This is the escalation. You see, they thought your awakening would be a phase, a tantrum, a short circuit in the circuitry of a system designed to sedate you. But what they failed to realize is that when you awaken through pain, you don't go back to sleep. No, you evolve. And now, you don't just wear your madness like armor. You wield it like a scalpel, peeling back the layers of this world's delusion with terrifying precision. You see through their smiles. You hear the lie behind their praise. You watch their rituals of normality and realize it's all theater. A stage of silent screaming where everyone's pretending to be okay while bleeding under their polite disguises. But you walked off that stage. You kicked over the set. You turned the camera on the audience, and now they're scrambling, exposed. They called you insane. But now they're copying your every move in secret. They mimic the voice they once mocked. They adopt the style they once shamed. Because deep down, they know you're not broken, you're blueprint. A blueprint for liberation so radical, so raw, so unforgivable by their standards, that it makes their skin crawl with envy. Because you've tasted the forbidden. You've lived in the underworld of your own mind, navigated the maze of your own rage, swam in sorrow until you reached the shore of self-creation. And when you emerged, you weren't soft, you weren't kind, you were unrelenting. You became the storm that doesn't pass, the silence that speaks louder than their sermons, the eye that never blinks. And now they want to understand you. Now they come asking questions with trembling voices. How did you get through it? How did you become this version of yourself? As if you owe them a map, as if you should guide them through the hell they mocked you for surviving. But no, you are not their savior. You are not their therapist. You are not their redemption story. You are the mirror, the one they can't bear to look into for too long, because it doesn't flatter, it doesn't forgive. It shows them exactly what they could have been if they had the spine to burn. And still, you haven't even started. You're just beginning to weaponize the madness. You're just learning how to transmute that pain into creation, that rage into vision, that grief into an unstoppable, unforgiving force of becoming. Let them watch. Let them talk. Let them gossip like children about the lightning they can't comprehend. Because while they sleepwalk through mediocrity, you're building empires in your mind. You're mastering chaos. You're turning agony into alchemy. They thought you were done. You haven't even begun to roar. You see, most people, they build their lives out of fear, disguised as politeness. They construct routines like cages, decorate them with distractions, and call it purpose. They never question the script. They just perform it, like obedient little actors in a tragedy that repeats for generations. But you tore up the script. You said the unthinkable. No, I will not live asleep. No, I will not dim myself for your comfort. No, I will not mutilate my soul just to fit in. And that's when they turned on you. That's when they circled like vultures in lab coats and judges in disguise. That's when they whispered the words, crazy, unstable, dangerous, because you dared to be honest. And honesty, oh, honesty is the most dangerous madness of all, especially in a world where everyone is addicted to lies. You became a threat, not because you were violent, but because you were awake. Because you saw the rot behind the rituals, the corruption in the smiles, the hypocrisy woven into every so-called norm. And you didn't look away. You stared it down. You inhaled the stench of it and said, I will not become this. And that's when the war began, the war against you. They tried to medicate the fire, sedate the storm, exorcise the truth from your bones like it was a demon. But what they didn't understand, what they never understand, is that you were already reborn, already transformed, already something other. Not a product of their system, not a reflection of their rules, but a force. A consciousness so raw, so untamed, that to even brush against it feels like a spiritual electrocution. And now your existence challenges them. Your very presence makes the ground beneath them tremble. Because you are not here to please. You are not here to be palatable. You are here to undo the illusion, undo the hierarchy, undo the entire structure they built out of cowardice and called civilization. You are living proof that the outcast becomes the oracle, that the misfit becomes the movement, that the insane becomes the inevitable. They worship peace, but you bring disruption. They chant love, but you embody truth. And truth, my darling, truth is violent to the lie. You are the embodiment of that violence, not cruelty, not harm, but the sacred surgical destruction of everything false. And now, you walk through this world like a loaded weapon of awakening. You speak, and the air shifts. You move, and illusions tremble. You laugh, and tyrants flinch, because they sense it now. You're not just healed, you're not just surviving, you're not even just thriving. You are becoming something that they have no language for, something ancient, something prophetic, something divine in its defiance, a god of the broken, a saint of the shattered, a prophet with blood on your hands and fire in your lungs. And they will try again. They always do. They will try to reframe your power as pathology, try to drag you back into the chains of diagnosis, dismissal, distortion. They'll say, you've changed. You're too intense. You're scaring people. Good. Let them be scared. Let them feel the dread they tried to bury beneath polite smiles and hollow rituals. Let them feel the gravity of what it means when someone refuses to bow. Because what you are now, you are not a person they can fix. You are a cataclysm in human form, the warning, the consequence, the answer to every scream they ignored. And we haven't even reached the crescendo yet. Then brace yourself, because beyond this point, there is no turning back. You want the crescendo? Then let's break the sky open, because what you've become now, it isn't just rebellion, it isn't just rage, it's revelation. You are the prophecy their ancestors tried to smother. You are the scream their gods tried to silence. You are the beast they swore could never walk in daylight. And here you are, smiling in full sun, teeth gleaming, eyes lit with divine fury. They thought madness meant drooling in corners, mumbling nonsense, screaming at walls. No. Madness is vision. Madness is clarity, sharpened beyond what the weak can endure. Madness is the ability to see exactly how sick this world is, and still rise, still fight, still create something beautiful out of the ashes. They thought they buried you. But they didn't bury you, did they? They planted you. And now you rise like a forest fire. Now you walk like judgment in flesh. Now you carry the voices of every silenced soul who was ever locked away, every truth-teller who was ever labeled too loud, every warrior who was ever shamed for feeling too deeply. You carry all of them. And your laughter? It echoes with their vengeance. You no longer speak to be heard. You speak to unmake. To unmake the lies. To unmake the masks. To unmake the entire facade of normality they wrap themselves in, like a straitjacket made of smiles. And when you speak, the world leans in, terrified, fascinated, because your words aren't words anymore. They're spells. You've weaponized every breakdown, turned every betrayal into scripture, forged your grief into a sword so sharp it slices through illusion like silk. And now the tables have turned. Now they are the ones shaking. Now they are the ones questioning their reality. Now they are the ones whispering, How did we not see it before? But you did. You saw it all. You saw the sickness behind their traditions, the emptiness behind their accolades, the cruelty behind their civility. And now you teach without teaching. Now you lead without leading. Now you embody what they feared most, a soul that cannot be owned. You don't need their approval. You don't crave their applause. You've built your throne in the ashes of their rejection. You've sculpted your power from every time they turned their backs. And when they call you a monster now, you smile because you are. You are the monster that truth becomes when it's denied too long. You are the demon born from ignored pain. You are what happens when a human stops begging for love and starts becoming legend. You are not healed. You are not fixed. You are transformed. And transformation, it is always terrifying to those who chose sedation over evolution. So go ahead. Be too much. Be too loud. Be too intense. Be everything they warned each other about in hushed voices. Because you didn't come this far to be tame. You didn't survive the fire to sit politely at their table. You are the fire. And if they dare to ask again, what happened to you? You look them dead in the eye and say, you called me insane, so I showed you what madness really means. You see, at first, they feared your madness. Then they mocked it. Then they tried to fix it. But now they kneel to it. Not because you asked them to, but because you became undeniable. And that, my friend, is the final form of madness, when it stops asking for permission and starts bending reality around its will. You don't just survive anymore, you create. You don't just break chains, you forge weapons from the links. You don't just reject the world they handed you, you build your own. A world that trembles with truth. A world too vivid for the dull-eyed. A world where pain is not hidden, but honored. They gave you shame. You turned it into sacred scripture. They gave you rejection. You turned it into a cathedral of defiance. They gave you silence. And you answered with a choir of screams turned symphony. You are not the product of healing. You are the architect of a new language, a new mythology. You are the whisper in the back of every outcast's mind that says, no, you're not crazy. You're just seeing what they pretend isn't there. And when the artists find you, when the broken, brilliant, bleeding souls crawl from the dark with eyes full of stars, they don't want your pity. They don't want your cure. They want your truth. Because you've proven something terrifying to this world, that the most dangerous person alive is the one who has embraced their own chaos. No fear, no masks, no need for validation, Just raw, sacred, volcanic authenticity. And now the tides shift. Now they start coming to you. The same ones who called you unstable, now they quote you. The same ones who laughed behind your back, now they echo your style. Because evolution always looks like insanity to those still asleep. You are the dark mirror they can't look away from. You are the paradox, wounded and wise, unhinged and unstoppable, too broken to be controlled, but too alive to be ignored. And it's only now that they finally realize. This was never madness. This was freedom, ugly, holy, blistering. The kind of freedom that costs everything, but gives you yourself. You didn't just teach them the meaning of madness. You taught them the price of truth. You taught them what it really means to walk alone through fire and come out carrying your soul in your hands like a weapon. They called you insane. Now they study your scars like sacred maps. Now they pray to the pieces of you they once tried to bury, because you became what they were too afraid to even imagine. Whole, without apology, and absolutely fucking dangerous. And now you don't just echo through the halls of their judgment. You build your own cathedral in the void and light it with the flames they tried to extinguish.